She was 3 gates away from the rest of her life. Raya Carter tightened the straps of her backpack and sprinted through the terminal, her worn-out sneakers squeaking against the floor. The announcement echoed again. "Final boarding call for Flight 209 to Portland." Her chest burned. Her flight was at Gate Bravo 12. She was at Gate Bravo 9. So close. She had been waiting for this moment for almost a year. One interview, one job, one shot to finally step out of the cycle she'd been stuck in. Working nights at a laundromat, weekends at an elderly care centre, saving every spare dollar. And now, finally, she was here. Portland, the organisation, the dream role, all within reach. Her coat flared behind her like wings, catching wind as she rushed past people sipping coffee and scrolling on their phones. She didn't care how she looked. She just needed to make it. One more gate. Then she heard it. A strange sound, soft, like someone had dropped something, and a breath, sharp, broken. She turned just for a second. An elderly man had collapsed near the side of a newspaper kiosk, his cane on the floor, a small suitcase tipped over beside him. One hand clutched his side. His head was tilted, eyes closed, breathing shaky. People were walking past, some glancing, none stopping. Raya froze. Gate Bravo 12 was just up ahead. The final call was now the last call. If she kept running, she might still make it. If she stopped, she knew exactly what that would cost. For half a second, her legs stayed rooted to the floor. Her heart was screaming, "Go!" But her feet wouldn't move forward. Instead, she found herself moving back toward the man, back toward the stranger. "Sir, can you hear me?" she asked, kneeling beside him. His eyes fluttered open, confused, unfocused. He tried to speak, but couldn't form the words. Raya looked around for help, raising her voice. "Excuse me, I need medical assistance here." A few heads turned. A man in a Transportation Security Administration uniform rushed over, then a woman with a walkie-talkie. A call was made. Paramedics were on their way. She stayed, kept talking to the man, held his hand steady while he trembled, checked his pulse, kept his airway open. Little things she'd learned after months helping seniors at the care centre. He wasn't her patient, he wasn't family, but in that moment he needed someone, and she was someone. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't heroic, it was just human. When the medics finally arrived and lifted the old man onto a stretcher, he gave her a faint nod, almost a smile. Then they wheeled him away, just like that. Raya stood there, silent. Then the realization hit. Her plane, her gate. Gone. She didn't run to the gate. She didn't try to beg or argue or plead with anyone. Raya just stood there, staring at the empty hallway where the plane used to be. The boarding door was closed. The window showed nothing but runway. Her seat, probably still warm, was now 30,000 feet in the air, flying toward a future she was supposed to be part of. But she wasn't on it. She slowly walked back to the nearest row of seats and sank into the plastic chair like the weight of everything finally caught up to her. Her hands were trembling. Her backpack slipped off her shoulder. She didn't even bother fixing it. No one around her knew what had just happened. To them, she was just another girl who missed a flight. But this wasn't just a missed flight. This was it. The job interview in Portland was at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. There were no more evening flights that could get her there in time. Everything she'd worked for, the extra shifts, the second jobs, the quiet nights spent rehearsing answers out loud in her studio apartment, it all vanished in one moment of choice. And yet she didn't regret it. Tired tears welled up in her eyes, not out of frustration, but because she had nothing left in the tank. No plan B, no backup funds, no way to explain to her mum why she came back without even getting the chance to try. She pulled out her phone, opened the email thread from the hiring manager, typed a short message. "I'm deeply sorry. I won't be able to make it to the interview. Something urgent came up and I couldn't board my flight in time. Thank you for the opportunity." She hovered her thumb over send for a few seconds, then pressed it, and turned her phone off. There was nothing left to say. A few minutes passed, maybe more, she wasn't sure. The janitor nearby, an older black man with tired eyes and headphones slung around his neck, paused sweeping and glanced at her. "You all right, miss?" She sniffed and forced a small nod. "Yeah, just missed my flight." He looked at her for a second longer, then gave a soft nod like he understood more than he let on. "Sometimes," he said, his voice quiet, "the ones we miss turn out better than the ones we catch." Then he went back to sweeping, the sound of bristles dragging across tile filling the silence. Raya didn't say anything, but those words stayed with her. For now, though, she was just a girl sitting alone in an airport, holding a useless boarding pass, wondering what came next. She wondered. There was nowhere else to be. The airport had emptied out a little. Late evening light spilled across the floor through high windows, turning everything soft and golden. Raya drifted through it like a shadow, not sure where she was going. Maybe toward the food court, maybe toward nothing at all. She didn't cry again. The tears had already come and gone. Now it was just that dull ache behind the eyes, the one you get when you're too tired to feel anything clearly, the one that whispers, "You tried, you really did." She passed a bookstore, a tired-looking man restocking snacks, a couple arguing quietly over boarding passes. Life kept going, just without her in it. Then she heard someone call out, "Miss Raya Carter." She turned around. A young woman in a navy blazer stood behind the counter of a nearby coffee shop, holding a small tablet and looking around. "Yes," Raya said, confused. "You've been requested to come to Gate 7, the woman said, tapping the screen. "There's someone waiting for you." Raya blinked. "I think you have the wrong person. I'm not on any more flights tonight." The woman smiled politely, like she'd heard that before. The name was specific, Raya Carter, Gate 7, that's all I was told. The woman didn't ask questions, didn't explain further, just pointed across the terminal. "Straight down, past security, then hang a left." Raya stood still for a moment. Was this a mistake, some weird mix-up? But curiosity was stronger than exhaustion now. So she slung her backpack over her shoulder again, legs sore from hours of running and waiting and sitting, and started walking. Gate 7 wasn't far, but the airport looked different now, calmer, like everything had slowed down just for her. When she arrived, 2 men in grey suits were waiting. Not like security guards, not like airport staff. They looked official, but not government official. One had a tablet, the other held a slim black folder. They both smiled when they saw her. "Miss Carter," the older one said, his voice calm, like they'd been expecting her for hours. "Thank you for coming. Mr. Blake would like to speak with you." Raya frowned. "I'm sorry, who?" "Edward Blake," the younger man said. "He's expecting you." Before she could ask anything else, the older one gently motioned to a nearby door marked Private Lounge, Restricted Access. "Right this way." The door closed softly behind her. For a moment, Raya just stood there, unsure if she had walked into the right place or the wrong one entirely. The private lounge looked nothing like the rest of the airport. The lights were warm, not fluorescent, the carpet thick, the walls covered in dark wood and framed black and white photos of airplanes from another time. It felt more like a quiet library in an old hotel than part of an airport. Then she saw him, sitting in a leather chair near the window, a man, older but now upright, alert and dressed in a tailored navy suit, looked up from a steaming cup of tea. Raya blinked. Her brain took a second to process. It was him, the man from the floor. The same man whose hand she had held while he shook and gasped for air. But now he looked, well, confident, put together. Like he belonged here in a way she never could. He smiled. "Miss Carter, I was afraid you wouldn't come." She stepped closer, unsure. "You're okay?" "Thanks to you," he said simply. "Please, sit." She hesitated, then lowered herself into the seat across from him. Her backpack rested at her feet. She felt out of place, still in sneakers and a wrinkled hoodie, hair pulled back from hours of running and waiting. He looked like a man who had never missed a thing in his life. "You looked different earlier," she said softly. "I tend to," he replied with a small smile. She didn't know how to respond to that. "What is this?" The man set his cup down and leaned forward, hands resting on his knees. "Allow me to introduce myself properly. My name is Edward Blake. I'm the founder of Cascade Air." Raya's eyebrows shot up. "The airline?" He nodded. "The very one you tried so hard to catch today." She stared at him, speechless. Her brain tried to connect the dots, but they wouldn't quite land. "I don't understand." "You will," he said kindly. "But first I owe you something far more important than an explanation." He leaned back, looked her in the eye. "You stopped," he said. "When everyone else walked past, you stopped." Raya lowered her gaze, uncomfortable. "You were in trouble. I just did what anyone would do." "No," Edward said gently. "You did what a good person would do. That's not the same." She looked up, surprised at how serious his voice had become. "I've spent most of my life building a company that moves people," he said. "But lately I've been wondering, What kind of people are we moving? What kind of values do we carry at 30,000 feet? He gestured toward her gently. Today I saw something I haven't seen in a long time. You helped someone who, to everyone else, looked like no one. Raya shook her head. You're giving me too much credit. No, he said again. I'm giving you a seat at the table, if you're willing to take it. She blinked. I'm sorry, what do you mean? Edward Blake smiled, that same quiet expression she remembered from earlier, but this time full of purpose. You missed a flight, he said, but maybe, just maybe, you arrived exactly where you were meant to. Raya wasn't sure what to say. The air felt still in the lounge, like the room itself was waiting for her to catch up. Edward Blake poured himself more tea from a small silver pot. He didn't rush her, he just let her sit with it. This strange truth, this twist that felt too big to name. You planned that? She finally asked. Back there, on the floor? His smile barely changed. Let's just say I was prepared for something like that to happen. She stared at him. Why? He set the teapot down gently. Because every so often I like to see the world without anyone knowing who I am. No entourage, no title, just me, and I watch. Watch what? He shrugged. People, how they move, how they treat each other when no one's watching. Raya let out a breath. So you were testing everyone? No, he said softly. Just hoping to be reminded that good people still exist. Her brow furrowed. That's kind of a risky way to find out. He chuckled. It is, but it's honest. She folded her arms, still trying to piece it all together. So what does any of this have to do with me? He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. I've been thinking about what comes next for Cascade Air. Not the business side of it. We're doing fine. But what kind of company do we want to be? What kind of legacy do we leave? He nodded toward her gently. I think you're part of that answer. Raya blinked. Me? Yes. She let out a soft, disbelieving laugh. You don't know anything about me. I know enough, he said. You helped someone when it would have been easier to walk away. You gave up something that mattered to you for someone you didn't even know. You didn't post it online. You didn't ask for attention. You didn't even wait for a thank you. He paused, then added, and you stayed until the very end. Something shifted in her chest, something that wasn't quite pride and wasn't quite fear, maybe both. I thought I lost everything today, she said quietly. And maybe you did, he replied, but maybe you also found something bigger. She didn't speak, just sat there, the silence wrapping around her like a question mark. Then he said the one thing she didn't expect. I want you to come work with us. Her eyes widened. I don't have experience in airlines. I was applying for a non-profit job. I'm not qualified. Edward lifted a hand gently. You're not applying. I'm inviting. She swallowed hard. I'm building something new, he continued. A division of Cascade Air focused on people, real people, caregivers, seniors, low-income families, the ones who get left behind in all the noise. I need someone who understands what it means to show up for others, even when it costs them something. He looked her right in the eye. I think that's you. Raya sat back, stunned. This morning, she was chasing a plane. Now, she was being offered something she hadn't even dared to imagine. She didn't know if she should laugh or cry or just breathe, so she did the only thing that made sense. She nodded, slowly. The room fell into a quiet pause. Not awkward, not tense, just full. Raya looked at the man across from her, still trying to decide if this was real, or if exhaustion had finally tipped her into some kind of lucid dream. Edward Blake didn't push, he simply sipped his tea and waited. You really think I can do something like that? She asked. I don't just think it, he said. I've seen it. But all you saw was me helping someone. That doesn't make me qualified to build a whole program. He smiled gently. No, but it tells me everything I need to know about the kind of leader I want building it. Raya sat back in the chair, heart still racing. She wasn't used to compliments, let alone from men in tailored suits and private lounges. In her world, kindness was something you did quietly, without ceremony, without applause. You should know, she said after a moment, I wasn't trying to get noticed. I didn't even think anyone saw. That's the whole point, he said, setting his cup down. The best people don't do the right thing to be seen. They do it because it's who they are. She exhaled, finally allowing herself to lean into the back of the chair. The cushion gave way, soft and quiet. It felt good to rest, even just for a second. This job you're talking about, she asked, what would it actually look like? Edward's tone shifted slightly. Not colder, but more intentional. You'd help design a program that makes sure no one gets forgotten when they fly. Not the elderly, not the single parents travelling alone, not the veterans or the caregivers or the people quietly holding too much on their shoulders. He continued, "We'd start small, trial programs, partnerships with non-profits you probably already know better than I do, and we'd build from there." Raya hesitated. "That sounds big." "It is," he said, "but it starts small, with people like you." She looked down at her hands, still slightly shaky. Her fingers fidgeted with the edge of her sleeve. "I wasn't planning on doing anything like this," she said. "I was just trying to get a job, just trying to make rent, honestly." "And now?" he asked. She looked up. "Now," she whispered. "I'm scared that I might actually be capable of more." Edward didn't flinch, didn't interrupt. "That fear," he said quietly, "usually shows up right before something good." There was a knock at the lounge door. The younger man from earlier peeked in. "Mr. Blake, the driver's ready." Edward nodded once, then turned back to Raya. "I'll have my team send the details to your email," he said, "but only if you want them to." She nodded slowly. "I do." He stood, buttoned his suit coat, then looked down at her with something that felt like pride, but gentler, quieter. "Raya," he said, "this isn't a favour. I'm not repaying you for helping me. I'm inviting you to help others. You earned this, all of it." He offered his hand. She stood, took it. For the first time that day, she didn't feel behind, or overlooked, or ordinary. She felt ready. Raya walked out of the lounge slower than she'd come in, not because she was tired, though she was, but because something inside her had shifted. It wasn't confidence, not yet, more like steadiness, like the ground under her feet had finally stopped shaking. The two men from earlier were waiting by the exit. "We'll escort you to the car," one of them said, then added gently, "Everything's already been arranged." She gave a small nod and followed them without a word. The hallway they took wasn't part of the regular terminal. No crowds, no announcements overhead. Just quiet corridors, soft carpeting and dim lights. It felt like a different world. Outside, a black sedan waited at the curb. The driver held the door open. Raya stepped in, still gripping her backpack like it was her only anchor to reality. The car pulled away, and she stared out the window as the airport lights faded into the background. She didn't know what tomorrow held, but for the first time it didn't scare her. When they arrived at the hotel, the driver handed her a small envelope. Inside was a plastic keycard and a handwritten note. It read, "Your flight leaves at 7:30 in the morning, gate Bravo 5. This time you won't need to run. Edward." Raya stared at the words, then smiled. A quiet smile, just for herself. Upstairs, the hotel room was modest but warm. Neutral colours, clean sheets. A welcome basket with snacks she didn't touch. She sat on the edge of the bed, took off her shoes, and let the weight of the day fall off her shoulders. She didn't call anyone. Not her mum, not her roommate, not even the hiring manager she had emailed hours ago. This moment wasn't something she could explain yet. It was still settling, still sinking in. She curled up on top of the covers, her backpack resting on the floor beside her. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't fall asleep thinking about what she didn't have, or what she had lost. Instead, she drifted off with something new in her chest, hope. The alarm on the hotel nightstand buzzed softly at 6 in the morning. Raya stirred, slowly opening her eyes. For a second, she didn't remember where she was. The soft sheets, the quiet hum of the air conditioner, the lack of chaos. Then she saw the envelope on the nightstand, and everything came back. She sat up, rubbed her eyes, and took a long breath. This time there was no rush, no frantic packing, no sprinting through terminals hoping she'd beat the clock. The flight wasn't a lifeline anymore. It was an open door. By 7 o'clock she was checked out and in a car heading back to the airport. The driver, a different one from the night before, didn't speak much, and Raya didn't mind. Her thoughts were loud enough. She still wasn't sure what she was walking into. Edward Blake had offered her a future she hadn't planned for. And though she'd said yes, she hadn't told anyone. Not her mother, not her friends, not even herself, really. It still felt too big to put into words. At the airport, she was guided through a separate security line. No waiting, no stress, no questions. Gate Bravo 5 was quiet, not empty, just calm, as if the world had finally stopped asking her to prove she belonged. The boarding agent smiled as she approached. "Morning, Miss Carter. You're all set." She blinked. "You know my name?" He nodded. "It's been noted you're with the Cascade guest list." Raya stepped onto the jet bridge with a strange feeling in her chest. Part nerves, part wonder. The last time she boarded a plane, she was anxious, sleep-deprived, and running on adrenaline. Now, she didn't feel small, she didn't feel invisible. She just felt present, The flight to Portland was smooth, no turbulence, no delays. She looked out the window most of the time, watching the clouds drift past like they had somewhere better to be. When they landed, a woman holding a sign with her name waited just past the arrivals gate. Raya smiled at the sight, though part of her still wanted to laugh. This kind of thing didn't happen to people like her. Or maybe it did, and she'd just never slowed down long enough to notice. The woman offered a firm handshake. "Welcome to Portland, Raya. We'll be heading straight to the Cascade building. The board is already there." Raya's heart skipped. "The board of directors?" The woman nodded. Just an informal meet and greet, no pressure. But Raya could feel the weight of it anyway. As they drove through the city, she looked out at the unfamiliar streets, the morning sun casting soft shadows across quiet sidewalks. And somewhere between one red light and the next, she realised something. This wasn't the future she had prepared for. It was something better. The Cascade building was quiet. Not in a cold corporate way, but in that calm, intentional kind of quiet. Floor-to-ceiling windows, soft-toned furniture, and sunlight pouring across the polished floors. Everything felt clean, modern, thoughtful. The kind of space where voices didn't need to be loud to be heard. Raya followed the woman from the airport through a wide hallway, her steps echoing faintly. At the end of the corridor, double doors opened into a meeting room. Not too large, not intimidating. Inside were 7 people, seated casually, coffee cups in hand, notebooks open. Some looked up and smiled, others were already standing to greet her. They didn't ask about her resume. They didn't quiz her on experience or degrees. They asked her about people, what she'd seen, who she'd worked with, what she believed mattered most when someone walked through an airport stressed, alone, or scared. She told them about the woman with 2 toddlers and no stroller, trying to get through security while holding everything. About the elderly man with hearing loss who always got lost during gate changes. About the single mum who cried quietly at the laundromat after her night shift, folding donated clothes. She didn't talk about herself. Not really. She didn't mention Edward Blake, didn't say a word about the night before or the private lounge or the flight she'd missed. None of it felt like it belonged in the conversation. Kindness, she believed, wasn't currency. It wasn't supposed to be traded in for opportunities or praise. It was supposed to be quiet, steady, lived. And she lived it. After the meeting, she was taken to a smaller office, just her and one woman from the board, older, sharp eyes, kind voice. "We've had a dozen people interview for this role," the woman said, "and not one of them came in and talked the way you did." Raya blinked. "Was that good or bad?" The woman smiled. "That's why you're here now." There was no contract placed in front of her, no hard sell, just an invitation. "We'd like to offer you the position," the woman said. "You'll help lead the design of our new care initiatives. Full salary, relocation assistance, housing support if needed." Raya sat very still. Her voice didn't come right away. "I'm honoured," she said finally. "You earned it," the woman replied. Raya nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Can I have a little time to think it through?" "Of course," the woman said. "But something tells me you've already decided." And maybe she had. 2 weeks later, Raya stood in a small regional airport in southern Oregon. No crowd, no cameras, just her, a folding table, a banner printed with the Cascade logo, and a new program name. Travel with Care. It was simple, exactly how she wanted it. The initiative wasn't flashy, not yet, but it had legs. Quiet seating areas for caregivers, free pre-boarding assistance for seniors, a hotline for overwhelmed parents travelling solo. Small things, but important ones. Things Raya had once wished someone else had thought of. Now she was that someone. She clipped her new badge onto her blazer, a loaner from her welcome package, and looked around. A woman with a toddler struggling to hold her carry-on, an elderly couple trying to read the departures board, a teenage boy pacing, nervous. These were her people now. Not as passengers, but as reminders. That what you build doesn't have to be big to matter, it just has to see people. And serve them. A reporter had reached out earlier in the week after a photo of her and Edward Blake surfaced on a business blog. The caption had called her the quiet new face of Cascade Air's Humanity Division. She didn't return the call, because the truth was she never told anyone what really happened at that airport gate. Not her new team, not her old friends, not even her mother. To them, she'd simply landed the kind of job most people dream about. A once-in-a-lifetime role that fit like it was tailored to her heart. And that was enough. She never needed credit, she just needed a chance, and a reason. Behind her, a volunteer tapped her shoulder. We're ready to start handing out the new care kits. Raya nodded. I'll be right there. She turned to look out the terminal window one last time. The sky was overcast, the runways quiet. A single plane was taxiing toward takeoff. She smiled softly to herself. The day she missed her flight, she thought she'd lost everything. But really, she had just found her place. And that's the end of her story. She missed a flight, but found something far more meaningful. Not a destination, not a title, but a quiet place in the world where she finally belonged. Because sometimes what feels like losing everything is just life making space for something better. Thank you so much for staying with this story until the very end. Truly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here. Before we wrap up, if this story meant something to you, I'd be grateful if you could leave a like and hit that subscribe button. Take care, and I'll see you again soon, right here on Rain Inside.